So welcome to episode 4 of Peacock Cinema Podcasts, your behind-the-scenes ticket to Peacock Cinema, a brand new community cinema in Dunfermline, Scotland's ancient capital. In episode 4, we'll be discussing the classic of Hollywood's golden age, and Audrey Hepburn's Hollywood debut in William Wyler's Roman Holiday from 1953. I'm Dr. Jamie Steele, one of the team at Peacock Cinema and lecturer in film and screen studies. And today, we're joined by Ellen Cheshire, author of a Pocket Essentials book on Audrey Hepburn. Welcome.
Hello.
Perfect. So I thought we were just going to open up with a bit of a chat about Audrey Hepburn to start with, but I wanted to kind of set the scene, paint a picture, if you will, of kind of what Roman Holiday is as a film. So it's a holiday romance, a thrill-seeking princess and a Vesper. Roman Holiday takes us to the tourist hotspots of the Italian capital and serves up a real treat. Featuring Gregory Peck and a debuting Audrey Hepburn, Roman Holiday is an immortal comedy romance from the glory days of Hollywood cinema. The film won 3 Oscars, and Audrey Hepburn provides a dazzling performance as a young princess who wants to slip away and experience the real Rome. In her first Hollywood role, she dazzled in this enduring film and won the Best Actress at the Oscars in 1954. So Audrey Hepburn, this is her kind of debut. She kind of started her career over in Europe. But who was Audrey Hepburn, and how would you describe her star image, Ellen?
Well, Audrey Hepburn was one of those very sort of unique actresses from this period. So where there was a lot of, this period, so when she comes to age in the sort of 1952, the same year that Marilyn Monroe makes Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. So there was this real sort of Hollywood type of the sort of buxom blonde, there's a whole legacy of those. And then in suddenly comes this, completely different figure. Literally the sort of gamine. She was European, but you couldn't quite settle where she was from. She was kind of born in Brussels. She spent the war in the Netherlands, and then she goes to sort of England, and that's where she sort of establishes her sort of theatrical career. And when she arrives in sort of Hollywood, there's a sort of fantastic screen test for Roman Holiday, where she talks really movingly about being in the Netherlands and the suffering during the year. She has, this sort of perfect sort of English accent. So it's really hard to sort of pigeonhole her, both her sort of accent and background and look. And it was just so completely different from some of the other sort of big Hollywood stars at the time. And I think that's why she sort of stood out in the way she did.
Yeah, I've always described her as being like a waif-like figure in real kind of radical contrast to the other kind of big stars of the day. And we always think of Marilyn Monroe, and we have the close-ups on different kind of parts of her body, shall we say, that kind of accentuates her sense of beauty. And this is something that underpins the kind of theoretical notion, and everyone refers to it nowadays as the male gaze, which is on those kind of figures like Marilyn Monroe, I think Lauren Bacall to a certain extent as well. But what we get with Audrey Hepburn is really something quite different, and she is, as you say, not American, and that kind of neatly situates her within a film like Roman Holiday. I remember watching an interview that she did in the Netherlands in Dutch, and it was quite interesting to kind of hear her speak not in English, because, as you say, she kind of is introduced in the screen test using this very quintessentially British accent, but then you hear her talking Dutch, and they referred in the interview to her Dutch accent, and she kind of talks about how she grew up during the Nazi occupation in Holland, and that's where she started as a ballet dancer, and lived for, and I've got written, 8 years during the war, which is why she has this kind of Dutch accent when she's speaking. So she's this kind of European, and it's very difficult to pin down where she's from. As you say, I would always argue that she's Belgian, because of her being born in Brussels, and there's kind of the memorials in Brussels to her, but she's also Dutch, she's also Anglo-Irish as well. Yeah.
So her mother is from the sort of Dutch aristocracy. So that's that legacy. But yes, her father was a sort of Irish background. Don't really talk about him so much as his political views during the Second World War, not really aligning with where we want to be. But so I think she certainly claims the sort of Brussels, the sort of Belgian and Dutch as her ancestry.
And that kind of ancestry, as you say, that aristocratic background that comes from her mother, again, neatly dovetails with her introduction in Hollywood in William Wyler's Roman Holiday. Now, William Wyler was also a European working in the Hollywood industry. So we have kind of two key European star and director. One, William Wyler from Germany, if I recall correctly, and Audrey Hepburn, who, as we say, has this kind of hybridized background. And she's introduced to us in Roman Holiday. I suppose this kind of moves into Roman Holiday really nicely, is this princess from somewhere and nowhere at the same time, if that makes sense. So it kind of fits with her identity. How did you see her kind of introduction in the film Roman Holiday?
Yes, in terms of the sort of her big sort of American film debut, this is Roman Holiday. She had made sort of like half a dozen sort of British films and a sort of a Dutch film, so she had film experience, and she'd slowly worked her way up through the sort of British film industry with small bit parts. You can spot her in the Lavender Hill Mob, for instance, and a bigger part in The Secret People, which is also an Ealing film where she gets to sort of use her ballet skills as well. But it was sort of a French short film, Monte Carlo Baby, where she was spotted by Colette, who was looking for a star to be in her stage production of Gigi. So Audrey Hepburn was sort of being sort of scouted over in Europe to be, Gigi. And at the same time, William Wyler was looking for someone to be the princess in his version. So Frank Capra had been trying to make this film for about 4 years before William Wyler sort of got his hands on it, but Frank Capra couldn't get sort of funding. So interesting, we're not seeing Frank Capra's Roman Holiday with Cary Grant and Elizabeth Taylor, which was his top choice. So it was kind of like en route from William Wyler was sort of en route to Rome, and he sort of stops off in London and meets a few sort of young women that sort of Ealing and other studios have put together for him, and sort of he settled on Audrey Hepburn. Obviously looking for that sort of spark of just something unusual about her. But she'd already committed to doing Gigi, so he thought, it'll only be a sort of few months, then then we can make Roman Holiday. Gigi goes on to be a big sort of blockbuster New York Broadway production, for which Audrey Hepburn wins the Tony Award. So the delays, Roman Holiday got delayed because of that. So it's sort of interesting that, he spotted her before she becomes a star, and then she becomes a star on sort of Broadway and in Hollywood simultaneously. But obviously not everyone would have gone to Broadway to see Audrey Hepburn there. And obviously a lot of these British films would have been quite obscure. So for the vast majority of people, Roman Holiday is the first time she's seen on screen, and she is so unlike anything else on screen. But I mean, in the real world, we had sort of Princess Margaret at the time, who was of a similar age and not being particularly, wedded to the whole kind of royalty, and was sort of dating outside of aristocracy. So there was a lot of sort of parallels there between the two of them. But yes, the first time we see sort of Audrey Hepburn as Princess Anne, she's very sort of on a sort of an international goodwill tour, and is wearing a beautiful gown, but is kind of uncomfortable in it. She's fidgeting and is sort of fed up and sort of bored with being on show and not having freedom. The first time we see her, and then sort of a bit later where she makes over herself into what she wants to be, is something that actually is very sort of common in a lot of Audrey Hepburn films, this sort of transformation and sort of making over sequence. So this kind of first film really sets a sort of pattern for some of the other films that follow.
Yeah, there's lots of myths that surround Roman Holiday and Audrey Hepburn's kind of introduction to Hollywood. As you say, there's the William Wyler watching the screen test, or being sent the screen test, I believe, for The Secret People from 1951. There's a lot about kind of being spotted as well. And these kind of myths seem to kind of, crystallize within her early star image. And when I watch her kind of in the opening sequence in the film, it kind of neatly fits her European credentials. As you say, she's offering something different to the traditional kind of film stars that we see within the golden age of Hollywood in that time. But as you say, she's someone who wants something different. She's someone who wants to kind of break away from the kind of very static position she's been placed in. And that opening sequence for me kind of really epitomizes that. She's regal, yet innocent, stoic, yet a little bit vulnerable. And William Wyler kind of neatly kind of plays with that, I think, in the opening sequence, where she's got this kind of statesman's-like persona. And then he kind of allows us to see her feet kind of fidgeting. As you say, she's kind of got itchy feet. And that kind of showcasing under her dress and focusing on her feet kind of makes her more of an individual, I suppose, and kind of heightens that sense of her individuality and her vulnerability to a certain extent, or that kind of youthful spirit that we see later in the film. And she also kind of operates within this pan-European identity that we see from her being Belgian, Dutch, British, Irish to a certain extent, when she isn't pigeonholed by coming from a certain European location. William Wyler leaves that very open deliberately, and that kind of neatly dovetails with Audrey Hepburn. And also she's able to kind of transcend these different European nations as well by greeting in the opening sequence all these different kind of people from different backgrounds, and kind of highlighting her mastery of different linguistic skills that again kind of fits with who we see Audrey Hepburn to be in terms of her kind of star image. But she also, as you say, within this kind of transformation in the film, she also offers something maybe a bit more androgynous, where we get the long hair symbolizing royalty, and then she's got this kind of short gamine kind of hair that she shifts to in the film. Do you mind saying a little bit more about kind of her transformation, how that fits with Audrey Hepburn and her films more generally? I know that's kind of something that's, these Cinderella-like moments are very Hepburn-esque.
Yes, I mean, she's the sort of overprotected princess who really sort of yearns for adventure. So she sort of takes the opportunity for hearing the sort of the tinkling music of Rome in the distance, sort of sets out to sort of find transformation. And in the sort of 24 hours that she's kind of out of sight of her sort of guardians, she transforms physically, in terms of having this haircut, but she also transforms from being a girl to a woman. So when come back to there, she's much firmer with her staff. So it's a real sort of like coming of age, but in 24 hours, sort of accelerated, with that. So she leaves with the sort of long hair and sort of slightly schoolgirl clothes and sort of sensible shoes, but has this sort of urge to rebel. And when she sneaks back in, she's got this short-cut hair and is wearing an outfit that's far more sophisticated, and she's traded her flat shoes to strappy sandals and things like that. So really sort of small details in that 24 hours. You mustn't forget that she meets Gregory Peck, because that's quite an important part of the transformation. But she also learns actually what her role is as a princess, and the sort of the lines between sort of duty and honor that she has to sort of withhold, leaving sort of aside any sort of emotions and romance. It's a really sort of clever, as you say, you sort of talked about it as a sort of, comedy romance. It is that, absolutely. It's a sort of romance, it's comedy, but it's actually a really sort of important, there's some really important things to say about, her role in her wider society, and how having that freedom away actually pulls her back in. I must admit, the first time I did watch it, I wanted a different ending, but now I've grown up and matured. I can accept that ending for what it is.
Yeah, I don't know how much we should go into the ending. I suppose we can reveal some spoilers. It depends on your point of view. I see. It depends on who you are as a spectator, because you hope for different things from the ending. I think on one hand, it kind of consolidates her position within society, and she kind of accepts her role, and that kind of leads, from a spectator's point of view, to a level of disappointment, I suppose, isn't it? Because you kind of think, oh, you want this. We're used to these happy endings, really. Within,
I was probably like 12 or 13 when I first saw it on those sort of Sunday afternoon double bills they used to have on BBC and Channel 4. So, but I was like, oh, damn.
you yearn for them to kind of be together, really, don't you, and have that happy ending, and yeah, you kind of want something a little bit different from the ending. But then I suppose from my point of view, you've kind of flagged a few things that maybe we can pick up on, is that from the other side, she's this young woman who's come of age and she's kind of transformed in these 24 hours. But she's always seems to be pitted against or in a relationship with much older men within the films as well, which for me, and I don't want to go into, we don't need to go into too much kind of, I suppose, nuanced detail in that. But when I watch the film, and it's kind of age, she's a young woman who's come of age and found a sense of identity, and maybe one hand there's that disappointment, isn't it? And then on the other hand, you think, well, actually, she can be who she wants to be now. She kind of has learned a bit more about herself, and she doesn't need to be qualified against an older man in order to be who she is, if that makes sense. She's kind of shed that innocence. And yeah, I've written a list down. So we have Gregory Peck, of course, and this film is very much, because obviously we got the debuting Audrey Hepburn in this film, so it's very much a Gregory Peck kind of film, isn't it? His name comes first. It's introducing Audrey Hepburn to us. Yeah. Also, I've written down, we've got Fred Astaire, obviously, with Funny Face, when she's kind of in Paris. Oh. Yeah. There's Bogart, there's Fonda, there's Cooper. Yeah.
Gary Cooper. I mean, that's probably the most unsettling, is the Gary Cooper Love in the Afternoon. Obviously. Yeah. It's not until I think she makes How to Steal a Million in 1966 that she gets a leading man of the same age in Peter O'Toole. So quite a long way in.
We are a long way in that case. We're around, kind of 14, 15 years into her career. Before then, she's like, a long...
some of these are 30, 35 years older than her, 40 years older than her. So it's, a different time.
No, certainly, yeah. And the film is made of that period as well. So we've also kind of hinted at a little bit about kind of the fashion, and Audrey Hepburn is seen as very much a fashion icon, isn't she? And as you say, kind of clothing is very central to the film. Do you mind saying a little bit more about kind of the fashion of the film and how that kind of dovetails with Audrey Hepburn and her star image?
Yeah, so this is a Paramount film who had Edith Head, who was one of Paramount's leading costume designers, and Edith Head created these costumes that sort of played into what Audrey Hepburn was like off screen as well. So towards the end, some little scarves around her neck and things like that Audrey had in her own life as well. So Edith Head was very good at sort of making her actresses and actors feel comfortable in the clothes they were wearing. And I think that's sort of a real art. We do have these glorious costumes. On the next film, that Audrey starts a relationship with the most important man in her life, which was Hubert de Givenchy. In that film, Edith Head does the kind of early costumes, and then the character goes off to Paris and gets made over and comes back with these fantastic Paris wardrobe, and that was Givenchy's clothes. Then they built this incredible relationship both on and off screen. So I think that's really where this sort of fashion icon status comes in all the sort of films that she made with Givenchy doing the costumes. So after that, she had a Givenchy clause in her contract, negotiated by her husband, Mel Ferrer. And, wherever possible, Givenchy didn't make the Nun Story costume, but, wherever possible, she has these amazing wardrobes to find Givenchy and off screen as well. So they had this parallel. They were even like sort of Barbie dolls of the sort of Givenchy costumes. So that's, there's some fantastic ones in like How to Steal a Million as well. Really, really sort of bonkers, sort of psychedelic 60s clothes. So she kind of moved with the times as well in her costume. But I think it probably was the Breakfast at Tiffany's, the little black dress, and the amazing hats that she had in that really sort of has cemented her. And you see so often the little black dress, the sunglasses, and the sort of swept up hair, and the sort of long cigarette from Breakfast at Tiffany's that gets so emulated. And sort of every week or so there seems to be some article talking about the little black dress, and they are illustrating it with that Audrey Hepburn dress from Breakfast at Tiffany's. So fashion has played a huge part of her life. And it's something that we're still talking about. Many years after she's died, she's still kind of everywhere with us in terms of images that you can buy. Her own socks, earrings, everything.
Yeah, in academic kind of context, and we talk about kind of star theory, and we have this kind of idea of the on-screen and the off-screen kind of personas, effectively, and with someone like Audrey Hepburn, her identity as being kind of European is on screen and off screen, and obviously we see this kind of overlap as well with her fashion and her clothing in her films, with Givenchy being both on screen and off screen. And again, that kind of for me ties into her kind of Europeanness as a star, because I always associate someone like Catherine Deneuve with Yves Saint Laurent and Hepburn with Givenchy as a result. So it's kind of she's very much kind of building herself as a kind of European star rather than our stereotypical kind of Hollywood star as well. And just to kind of foreground or kind of call back for our Peacock Cinema going audience, Edith Head also did the costume for To Catch a Thief, which we screened earlier on in the program as well, and that's very much kind of associated with the glamour of Grace Kelly's body and star image as well. So we're seeing these kind of these patterns across the program as well. I suppose we've just been centering mainly on Audrey Hepburn and the kind of perennial legacy that she's had with, as you say, these kind of frequent references to her kind of image, how she has this kind of iconic status. And for me, it kind of always remember the 2015 Galaxy adverts, which for me kind of is this reappropriation of Hepburn's kind of glamorous image. But so we've kind of talked about Hepburn. There's a little bit of Gregory Peck thrown in, but we haven't really talked too much about the production of the film. And Rome is very much a character, really, in and of itself within the film. There's key kind of parts of Rome that appear within Hepburn's as Princess Anne's kind of wanderings around the city of Rome. Do you mind saying a little bit about the kind of the making of the film, the kind of locations, how Rome is a character in Roman Holiday?
Yeah, this is a sort of period where actually it was quite rare for Hollywood films to be traveling overseas to this extent. In sort of early 50s, they sort of start doing this. And Italy, the sort of Italian government, were very keen to attract production from overseas. They had this massive studio, Cinecittà, which is sort of on the outskirts of Rome. It is open to the public. So if you are in Rome, get the tube line out to the outskirts, and it's right by the tube station. And you can go on walking tours of the Cinecittà, and there's 2 museums there. So I definitely recommend that. So when I went to Rome, it was like everybody else is heading to the Colosseum. I'm heading out to look at the fake Rome that's there. So they were sort of attracting production to Rome, and they were like wanted to sort of shed the kind of image of Rome from these kind of what they thought was like depressing post-war social realist films with sort of poverty. So this kind of production that was really very much a sort of a showcase of the sort of the glamorous, the exciting, the new that we would see later in sort of Fellini's films, that sort of exciting Rome. So this was a very sort of compelling production for the Italian government at this point to support. But it was a very long, demanding schedule. They started filming in June 1952. And having been in Rome in June, it's really very hot. And shooting went on till October. So that's a long shoot to be overseas, away from sort of family and so forth. But they do make obviously good advantage of the studios at Cinecittà, but also, as you said, a lot of these really sort of iconic locations. So when I went to Rome, it was like, I'm not going to look at all the famous, I'm only doing the walking tour of the Roman holiday locations, which obviously took me past all the key things. So there's the Spanish Steps, where she has her ice cream on the Spanish Steps, which has the Keats Shelley Museum next to it as well, if you go there now. And then there's sort of the Mouth of Truth. And again, when I was there, such a long queue, but everybody was doing the hand bit in their photo shoots at the station. So how it's sort of so embedded into the sort of psyche of film goers, if they don't even know what they're emulating now. They just see the person before. So it's supposedly, in terms of myths, and that was supposedly not known to Audrey Hepburn that Gregory Peck was going to do that. So that was supposedly a genuine reaction, but it's another myth or not. So yes, it really makes good use. And then there's the fantastic scenes on the Tiber itself when they're having a party and the fight breaks out when the secret service come up to reclaim her. So it just really makes very good use of the city. And then the Vesper again, in terms of that sort of iconic images of kind of what you do in Rome is you ride around on a Vespa.
When in Rome, as they say.
So it kind of really has this, that film I think has established for what Rome then sort of sells itself on over the next, 50, 70 years now, in terms of all their merchandise. It is a lot of it is around the sort of images and iconography that they sort of so capitalize on in this film, and then we would see sort of following on in other sort of Italian films, and the filmmakers going back to either sort of retread this film sort of more directly or covertly in sort of like the swathe of Hallmark movies we have all set in sort of Rome that sort of again draw on these images.
I've never been to Rome, but my understanding is that in the Rome airport, there is a mouth of truth that you can put your hand into, as well as a kind of cardboard cutout Vespa where you can kind of put your faces of in place of Gregory Peck and Audrey Hepburn in the film. So again, kind of crystallizes this film tourism, really.
It is film tourism.
Yeah, which is a separate podcast probably in and of itself as well, is kind of thinking about kind of film tourism and how kind of people are drawn to certain places, locations, and particularly kind of Roman holiday for this film. And if anyone's kind of interested, there's also a kind of then and now as part by a Sight and Sound that they published a couple of years ago that takes pictures of locations in Roman holiday with the current locations now. So there is this kind of, continued interest in the film, and it's kind of centering around this kind of tourism, which is kind of what Audrey Hepburn does as Princess Anne in the film. She's experiencing Rome as a tourist within the film. So for a little bit of context, you say the Tiber plays a kind of role, and this is known as there's kind of an epithet or a phrase of Hollywood on the Tiber from this period of time. So we get a number of film productions in the 1950s that moved to Italy to take use of Cinecittà, the studio that was built by a previous Italian politician, let's say, and is one of the biggest kind of film studios in Europe, and it was making use of this kind of space, and it was breaking away from the, as you say, kind of near-realist Italian films that were on location shooting, primarily looking at kind of social deprivation characteristics within Italy at that period of time. And as this kind of, we get this radical shift with these runaway Hollywood films in Italy, Roman holiday films kind of on these different locations, making use of Rome as a kind of character, as a setting of itself. But we get a number of different kind of Hollywood films that decamp to Rome. We get Ben-Hur in the late 1950s, Cleopatra kind of famously in 1963. At the time was one of the most expensive films ever produced, and it was cheaper to produce the film in Italy. So it was kind of making use of these kind of spaces, these studios, these locations. And also there are a number of kind of different, as we say, kind of myths and reports around kind of the shift in the film industry at this period of time, where a number of studios have kind of Italian lira that's blocked. So it's making use of that within Italy for these film productions. Yeah, making use of the different kind of local subsidies as well. So there are kind of these very pragmatic reasons that lead to this move in film production in Hollywood in the 1950s and the 1960s. I think after the relatively unsuccessful, it didn't quite recoup its cost at Cleopatra. There was a move away from this in the late 1960s and early 1970s. But it's a key part in Hollywood's kind of history and its production history as well, which is quite interesting as a case study. I think there's a whole documentary dedicated to it from 2009. And I shouldn't plug other podcasts, but the Film Stories Writers on Film podcast, there's also one in January of this year that goes into this kind of background in detail as well. So we talked about the production, we talked about the history, we talked about Audrey Hepburn. I suppose we've also kind of talked a little bit about the film's legacy, but what else is kind of the film's legacy, would you say? Kind of how has it still got this appeal to contemporary audiences? And also, actually, one thing that I found quite striking this week in the Peacock Cinema was that there was a big kind of range. The demographic was quite wide. We had a younger audience and a more mature audience as well going to watch this classic film. So what would you say the film's kind of legacy is?
So probably one of the sort of strangest sort of legacies of this Roman holiday the TV series Sabrina, the Teenage Witch, the original, not the sort of current remake. They did a TV movie back in 1998 where Sabrina is on holiday in Rome and someone spots her sort of being a witch. So it is basically the same kind of plot line, but just as a witch rather than a princess. So there have been some sort of very strange attempts to sort of capitalise on this over the years. And that's one to check out if you're feeling in a cheeky mood. I think Audrey Hepburn just still feels so contemporary. I mean, she had a 40-year career, sort of early 48. Her last film is where she plays an angel in Steven Spielberg's film Always. But she only made less than 30 films over this 40 years. And then towards the end of her life, she was very involved in the Red Cross. So she did a lot of PR and sort of as a goodwill ambassador for the Red Cross. So she was just sort of seen a lot and just always came across as, lovely, wonderful woman. But when you look back at some of these, the key ones that really stand out, Roman Holiday, A Breakfast at Tiffany's, Charade, there's something really sort of quite contemporary still about her look and just all the sort of iconography we have. So which is why for young people, she has literally brand recognition. She's still with us, and for sort of older people that may have seen some of her later films, going back to see films on the big screen is such a different experience than watching films on television. I went to cinema recently and saw a film that I've probably seen a dozen times at home. Saw it for the first time in the cinema, 50th anniversary reissue. Completely different experience. So, seeing films on the big screen is just, where they're meant to be seen. And this one has all those sort of charm and sort of lightness about it is very appealing. And I think, the sort of interrogation, so you can watch it as a sort of romantic comedy, but there is also sort of depth and substance to it for those that want to sort of be challenged and pushed a little bit more in their material than we would just from the standard comedy these days. We haven't talked so much about Gregory Peck's character, but actually he also has a very interesting character arc in this. In his 24 hours, he also grows up and actually accepts a different kind of responsibility and actually has a different sort of value on his work and what is important. So there's a really sort of clever sort of dual sort of coming of age story. Despite Gregory Peck being a sort of an older, more established person, and also sort of as an actor. There's some really sort of interesting things going on there with some of the other characters, as well as Audrey Hepburn.
So thanks to Ellen for lending her expertise on all things Audrey Hepburn, and importantly, our film screening Roman Holiday. So this is a wrap on season 1 of the Peacock Cinema and our first ever programme. We've had such a great response from the local community, and we've had such a great range of screening introductions, Q&As, and some short films from local filmmakers as well in place of trailers. It's been a real celebration of community, bringing in new audiences, and most importantly, using the cinema space, using cinema to bring people together and to tackle isolation. So what's next? So, season 2 will be a short season of Halloween films and classic anniversary films in late October, early November, in line with the holiday season. 2025 is a time of some films that are coming of age and coming to their anniversaries. Jaws is 50, the Monty Python is 50 as well, and Richard Linklater's film Before Sunrise is somehow 30 alongside Toy Story. So we're looking at those kind of films, we're looking at that as kind of our next short season. In January, we're looking towards the centenary of Moira Shearer's birth, with some screenings commemorating her as one of the major film stars from our city, Dunfermline. Thank you very much for listening, and thanks very much for tuning into Peacock Cinema Podcasts.